Well, thanks so much for tuning in to the Rural Radio Network. We're joined now by Holdrege, Nebraska's own Richard Eng. He just wrote a book called What is Heaven Like? And we're going to learn a little bit more about Richard and his story. Richard, thanks so much for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here with you.
So we want to get, of course, to learn a little bit more about your book and the story that you wrote, but let's back up a little bit and get to know you. Tell me more about Richard.
Yeah, well, I have been on staff at Trinity Church in Holdrege, Nebraska for 8 years. Went to school in Omaha at Grace University. So really just enjoy working with young people, and it's just my passion to share the gospel with them. I have a wife and two kids, four, almost two, and one more who's going to be born here in the next few weeks. So we're pretty busy.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Okay, so a family pastor, what exactly does that mean?
So I oversee kindergarten through 12th grade and just help bring about our family ministry strategy here, equipping parents and kids to know the gospel and bring about young disciples, right? So that's primarily what we do through programs and relationships, and all through our vision of reaching people in a vulnerable and truthful way. So.
Hmm. Why is that specifically what you wanted to go into?
I am just so passionate about reaching the next generation because I see young people who just, maybe they have a bad taste in their mouth about Christianity, either from their family or from social media or whatever it is. And the good news of the gospel is something that needs to be preached over and over again to a new generation. And the vast majority of believers become Christians when they're kids. So for us to reach them at that critical age is just so strategic and important. So, and to come alongside parents as well to equip them for what they need to do. So,
Yeah. Richard, you're taking that to a whole new level. You recently released a children's book called What is Heaven Like? Tell me the story about this book.
yeah. Well, I tell people the book almost happened to me, right? So about a year ago, never set out to write a children's book. And but about a year ago, my wife and we found out that she was pregnant again shortly after the birth of our son. And less than a week later, we found out that she was losing the baby. And anytime you go through times of loss and grief, you wonder, where is my loved one? Well, for me, part of the grieving process was thinking about all of the conversations that I wouldn't get to have with my child about God and Jesus. And specifically, when you think about where is my loved one, you think about heaven, the afterlife. And so I will never forget being in my office and imagining a conversation I wish I could have with my unborn child about what heaven is like. So I took out my computer and I started typing a conversation that I wish I could have. And for whatever reason, it was just kind of maybe a creative thing or the Spirit of God at work in a mysterious way. But I wrote it as if it were a kid's book. And I showed it to my wife and some close friends, and they said, "You need to do something with this." And I thought, okay, I'm not a children's author. I'm not an author. I've never done this before. I don't have funds to self-publish or anything. And God just kept providing resources and the open doors to make it happen. And now here I am a year later with this book, What is Heaven Like? And it is a conversation between me and presumably my son, Jesse, about what heaven is like.
Oh, that's beautiful. It gives me chills. So, in the future, do you see writing more books like this as a conversation between maybe you and Jesse, or just, you and other children of God?
That's a great question. This has kind of been an unexpected thing, but I've really found a passion here, and I'm actually working on another book right now that I'm excited to share more about as things develop. Um, a little bit different of an angle than I went with this one, but I'm just realizing parents are just searching for those solid resources that they can trust in a world where there's so many books that say they're good but really are deceitful. I want to write good, good books that parents can have trust in, that they can know, they can use it, and when they don't have the words to say, they can read my books to their kids.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, that's something that is just so incredibly critical to the development of the future. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So that book writing process specifically, what exactly did you have to do?
I went through self-publishing. My publisher's Westbow, and it's a lot of do it yourself when you don't have the resources of a large traditional publisher. It's a lot of figuring out social media and illustrations and copy editing and a lot of things that I just didn't know about. So I'm Googling all these things, and it's just been a really fun, interesting process where I've learned a lot. And I will definitely take that into my next book. But I've relied heavily on my training that I received on my master's degree, and just really have been influenced by C.S. Lewis's imaginative approach of using stories to captivate the imagination of kids and almost help kids get inside the truth. And Lewis put it like this: instead of looking at something, it's like you're looking in something. Like instead of looking at a beam of light, you're kind of stepping into the light, and you can see the world in a new way. And in some ways, going to another world helps you to come back to this world with a new, fresh perspective. That's what he was doing with Narnia, and that's what I'm trying to do with my books too.
Absolutely. That's so cool. Richard, for people who want to get their hands on this book, how do they do that?
Yeah, you can look it up on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any major online retailer. Just search "What is Heaven Like," and it should be one of the top results. You can also go to my website, richardrang.com, and you can find the links there. And I just want to encourage you. My book really helps kids to understand that heaven is more real than this life. And when we go to heaven, God will give us a good job that we will love to do. We won't be bored. We'll be excited to work and to enter into that creative, cultivating work that God gave Adam and Eve. And that's what I try to accomplish with What is Heaven Like? And I've just heard parent after parent reach out to me and say, I am now excited to go to heaven because I know it's going to be good and I'm not going to be bored. It's going to be great. So, for kids to learn that, I'm just thrilled to be able to have a resource for them. So, please do check it out.
Very cool. Richard, I want to round out this conversation by asking you this. Do you have a favorite piece of scripture that you like to share with people?
Hmm. You know, it's tough because as a pastor, I have so many that come to mind, and it almost depends on the situation, right? Um, but my life verse is in Matthew 21, where Jesus is talking about how if you are faithful with a little, he will give you more. And I have seen that time and time again in my life, that if I am just faithful with this little manuscript that kind of came out of nowhere in a time of grief, that God will just keep giving me more. And uh, I don't have to be ready. If I knew the plans that God had for me, I'd probably be overwhelmed. But all I need to do is be faithful to the next step. And that would be my encouragement to you as you're listening. This is a crazy world. There's a lot going wrong. But God's call for us is to remain faithful in obedience and dependence upon Him for strength and perseverance and hope in the Spirit. So keep going and rely on Him as we just try to navigate this new world.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Richard, what else is important to mention that we missed?
Ooh, you know, at the back of the book, I provide discussion questions for parents to be able to dig deeper into the conversation with their kids. Some people just need to have a suggestion for where to start. I've also got recommended reading for parents at the end of the book, just so that you can get a little bit deeper into the themes that I express. Also on my website, I've wrote a free 10-day devotional for parents to be able to understand more about what heaven is like and the theology of heaven. In a kid's book, you've got 30 some odd pages to dig into some themes, but for you to have some resources and to be equipped, that's my heart, and to make it very practical for you. So there you go. That's about all I got for you.
Amazing. Richard, thank you so much for making time to do this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
That was Richard Eng. He is the author of What is Heaven Like, recently released. It's a children's book. Go check it out. I'm Alex Wojcicki reporting for the Rural Radio Network.